Well, we're here on the Andrew Burnett Show. I'm your host, Andrew Burnett, and I'm here with a very special friend here, Sharon. You'll remember her from Sharon, Lois and Bram, and her awesome daughter, Randi. I tell you, I was listening just before the interview to the album, The Best of the Best. And man, I tell you what, it was just like reliving the whole dream over again, just listening to those songs. It was like, wow, I remember that.
Well, that
Wow.
was the goal. I'm really happy to hear that because, particularly in a time when we can't do live music for children in person, the opportunity for families to share the experience of a live concert was the goal of this project. So I'm delighted that you felt that way.
So, Sharon, to start off our interview, take us back to October the 8th, 1984, the premiere of the Elephant Show for the first time on CBC. What kind of emotions were running through your mind at that point?
Well, it was all, in a way, it was all new. We had done some TV specials, but we'd never done a series of this sort. And so we were kind of new to it. It was very exciting, very exciting. And it was a lot of fun. And the response, of course, took our breath away. I mean, the audience was ready for it, eager for it, and we had great fun doing it. We learned a lot in the process. We had a wonderful director. His name was Stan Swan, and he directed many, many, many elephant shows for us over the years. But he explained to us, he said, when you're performing in a live concert, you're singing to the child in the back row. When you're on television, you're singing to one kid in the front row. And so he was teaching us how to be good on TV. And he would say to us, if we didn't get it right, he'd say, "You're playing to Australia." So it was thrilling. And then of course, when the show went on Nickelodeon a few years later, it changed the career pretty significantly. All of a sudden we were playing to all over the US to very large audiences. It was pretty thrilling.
So, I have to ask, where did the name The Elephant Show come from? Was it due to your love for elephants?
Well, the thing is, when we got together, when the trio got together, we had to decide on a name for the trio, a name for the record company that we were creating, and a name, yeah, for the record, for a name for the record company, and the trio. So the trio, we knew we wanted to use our names, and we just tried every configuration of them, and Sharon, Lois, and Bram seemed to flow best, and that's what we ended up with. Um, because the first record was called One Elephant, Deux Éléphants, two elephants, it kind of put the idea of elephants into our mindset. And ultimately, after thinking of all kinds of options, we came up with Elephant Records. And by the time we started doing the Elephant Show, we had incorporated a dancing elephant into our show. Quite not a fancy marketing plan, simply here was the song about an elephant, and there happened to be a production of Babar, a dance production going on in the city, and we borrowed a costume and put a friend in the costume. At one point, we put Randi in the costume, and she got to be our elephant. And so the elephant was kind of connected to us, and so the elephant show seemed a natural connection. We do love elephants, and elephants are a very nice symbol. They're a very family animal. They take care of their young. They I mean, it's a very, they're strong and kind, and it was a very good image. And of course, some of us, Bram and I and Randi for sure, have traveled to Africa a number of times and experienced seeing elephants.
Yeah.
So, what about a funny story while you were recording the show with Lois and Brown that you'll never forget?
Oh, that's interesting.
I have one.
Oh, good.
Well, it's about me. So Lois wasn't feeling well one day when they were recording Fish and Chips and Vinegar, and they had the musicians in doing their parts, and at the time they would record something called a dummy vocal, which would be a model vocal to use to go with the song, and each Sharon, Lois, and Bram each had their parts in the song that they were singing. and there was a trumpet and a trombone and, you know, three different instruments to partner with the singers. So I was singing Lois's part. And when they recorded it and played it back to me, the sound engineer had deliberately tuned it down a quarter of a tone so it sounded like I was singing flat. And then he played the horn instrument with it. And I was horrified. And my mother was sitting in the control room saying, she wasn't singing flat. She wasn't. They played this terrible trick on me. So that was pretty funny.
I can tell
I'll
you a
never
funny,
forget that.
oh, that was horrifying. It was mean. That mostly in the studio, people were not mean. They were kind. We had, you know, we had a tradition in the recording studio where if Paul Mills and Chad Urshik, who were producing and doing all of that for us, if they didn't like what we had done, what the recording that we would done, they would say to us, we come in to, you know, to listen or to hear what they had to say. And they'd say, oh, that was fine. And we would say, we do not strive for fine. And it was their way of telling us, get back in the studio and do it
Do
again.
it again.
Yes.
Wow. So take us back to the first time you ever heard the widely popular song Skinnamarink. And did you ever think that it was going to be a song that was requested over and over again and just a song that the world really loved?
Never in 1,000 years could we have imagined what that song would become. It came to us through Lois. Each of us had gone to our families and friends to borrow money for our first record, One Elephant Deux Elephants. And Lois went to Chicago to her family. And while she was there, she hung out with her cousin Lisa, who was a little girl, and she'd come from, I think, from Girl Guide camp. And Lois said, do you know any good songs? And Lisa taught her Skinnamarink. And Lois came back to Toronto and said, I heard this nice song. And we said, oh, let's use it. Let's put it on the recording. And so we used it not as a closer, just as one of the songs on the album. We had a funny story. We had a woman who did a little tap dance break in the middle of the song. So she was in the recording studio. We put a piece of wood on the floor and she tap danced in the instrumental section. Her name was Shirley Temple, not the real Shirley Temple. Well,
That
she is
story-
the real Temple.
That story the story becomes more obsolete because
people don't
she's
know
now
who she is.
probably been dead for 30 years. So
You're right. It was significant for us. Anyway, we used it on the record. You know, Bram played guitar and I sang harmony and Lois sang melody. It was just a sweet little song. But when we did our first concert ever, we said, gee, that's such a lovely message. Let's sing that song to close the show. We did not know that we were starting a trend that would be a forever trend for us. And we certainly didn't know the response that the audience would have to it. And it's quite touching. And then, of course, we have a new book called Sharon, Lois and Bram Skinnamarink. Randi, you should tell about it since you turned it from a pamphlet to a book.
well, I'm showing Andrew just because I can. I realize this is not a visual medium, but we have a beautiful color picture book where we have talked about lots of different places where I can love you when you're grumpy, or, you know, like I love you all over the world. I mean, just the messages expanded further to try and incorporate and include more people into the book. So
And difference.
yeah, so it's the first of 3 books that we're working on. We have just finished recording new versions of When Elephant Went Out to Play and Peanut Butter, and those books are coming out in the summer and fall of 2022.
Well, Elizabeth was telling me a little bit about that, and you've written additional lyrics to go along with these songs. Share with us a little bit about what really inspired you to write these additional lyrics to the songs.
Well, you better ask, are you asking Randi that question since she's the one who wrote them?
Yes.
I mean, thank goodness for Randi, because Bram and I would be sitting home with our feet up if it weren't for Randi doing all this extra stuff.
It really, when they told me they were going to do a book of Skinnamarink, I just felt like there needed to be more, and I didn't want someone else responsible for the more. So I started with I love you when you're happy and when you're feeling blue, and you know, that those messages. And as the song evolved, Uh, it just came to me in a very organic way. Um, and the most amazing piece about it for me was that Sharon and Bram incorporated the new Skinnamarink into their uh, final tour with before Bram retired, and the audience instantly embraced it. They really all they want to sing along with the I love yous, and they want their turn to sing along at the end, but they like the new verses, and it just it it feels good hearing it that way. So I'm very, very proud.
That is
So am I,
awesome.
by the way.
So let's talk a little bit about the best of the best live. You know, when I was sitting there listening to that album, you know, it was just amazing to hear songs like She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, songs like Skinnamarink, and just so many. So, Randy, what was it like for you to be able to co-produce this project?
Well, when I started listening to the recordings, I was so thrilled and surprised at how good quality they were, and how amazing the vocals were of the trio, how tight their harmonies were, and how amazing the band arrangements were. And once I realized that this was actually something that we could do, the challenge then became what to leave out, because there was so much that was good. I was like, okay, well, what's going to be the real authentic feel of a concert from start to finish? And what songs are people going to most want to hear? And we had a lot of help with that from JC Valeris and Chris Stangley, who really winnowed down for me so that I could share with Sharon and Bram, and we could pick out the best quality arrangements for the album. But I think there's enough for a second one, honestly, and I hope that that is something down the road that we will do.
Wow.
So, what are some of your personal favorites on the project?
Um, well, I'm surprised because it's not one of my favorite songs, but Going to the Zoo. There's a lot happening in there, and I'm very excited by the way the keyboard player, Grant Slater, is playing and the horns. There's just so much happening there, and it's got some really good energy. But then I also like a simple little thing like Dirty Old Bill, which is just a rousing sort of a cappella thing. So, what about you, Mom? Do you have some
I,
favorites?
the thing that struck me is the band. I know that we have a great band. We've had a great band over the years, but when you're in the thick of it, you don't hear individual kinds of things. But when I listen to this, I think, wow, listen to that solo. That is a fabulous solo. So it made me love them all over again. And we actually had a little get together. You can't have a launch of a record right now the way one would do in normal times, but we were able to have everybody double vaccinated come to Randy's house, and we'll all celebrate together. So we had about 3 or 4 or 5 of the band who joined us for an evening of nostalgia, talking about crazy times that we've had together. And Grant Slater, who's our keyboard player, he's the only person who has ever kept track of how many shows we've done. And he's been with us, what is it, Randy, 35 years?
32 years, yeah.
30 years. And he kept track of, I can't remember how many, 1,000+ shows. And at one point, we were laughing about it the other night. At one point, it was 500 or 700 shows. We were on the road somewhere, and we got a big cake and put a bunch of candles on it. We couldn't put 500 candles on it, but we lit all the candles. We were in the back of the bus. We lit all the candles and brought it up to surprise him. And they all caught. And all of a sudden, the bus was full of smoke. We said, what have we done? So those are the kind of crazy, zany, nostalgic things. We really were like a family. I mean, people got along well, and we celebrated everybody's, life on the road with Sharon, Lois and Bram meant, let's find somewhere good to eat. And if someone had an occasion, we'd go out together to celebrate and that kind of thing. So it was kind of, I hate to use the word wholesome because it sounds so boring, but it was kind of wholesome. I'm sure the guys did things that weren't always so wholesome, but I didn't have to know about that.
Did you have a favorite track, Andrew? Sorry.
I do. Skinnamarink was my favorite. Just the way that they really introduced it and the way that they went into it, with it being a sentimental song, it's just one that the world really needs to hear these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need good messages. We need happy thoughts. And the other night I had some dinner in a restaurant. I was my friend and I were the only ones in the restaurant, but a woman came in for a takeout order, and then she came over to me and apologized for interrupting and talked about what our music meant to her. And sometimes people get kind of weepy when they tell me those kind of things. And I always say to them, don't be embarrassed. You're talking about happy childhood memories. That's a rich memory. And if we've given people some of those, I'm so proud.
So, is there a story on that note? Because that was my next question. Is there a story that you've heard from a fan on either how their music impacted their lives, or just a comment that you'll never forget that you've heard so far?
Well, there have been many comments. It's hard to tell you which one matters, but I remember that we were we were at a show in northern British Columbia, a very remote place, and we were signing autographs after the concert. And there was one woman who waited and waited and waited till everybody else was gone. And then she told me her story, and her story was that she had a very abusive childhood, and that the thing that saved her was escaping into our music and feeling connected to us. And she cried and I cried. And the happy part of that story is that she left that horrible environment at a very young age. She got married, she has 3 children, she's a happy woman, and she made it. So it's nice to hear a story like that with a successful ending. We've met a lot of people who have said that that we help them survive hardship. And of course, we never had any idea about any of that. We just wanted to make good music for children and their families and hopefully enrich their lives in that way. So it's a bit of a gift, not a bit, it's a lot of a gift to us to know these things.
TikTok has been an amazing conduit for that feedback recently, because we are reaching people in a broader way than we ever have. So, a recent Skinnamarink video that we posted on TikTok had 4.5 million views and hundreds of thousands of comments from people. So,
One of the comments that you mentioned, are you going to mention it, Randy? One of the comments that I loved, it was an expression that I'd never heard: memory unlocked.
Oh yeah, that was mentioned thousands of times. It's also like, why am I crying? That's a very common one in a positive way. I would love to just share one of the recent stories that I had, which was a young woman who came out to talk to me at the merch table, um, and said, I am a survivor of ovarian cancer. As a teenager, I had cancer, and I was told that I was not going to probably make it. And I am here cancer free with my 3-year-old daughter. And your mother's cancer survivor story inspired me. And, I grew up on their music, and now I'm here healthy with my child. And that was very
Wow.
meaningful. Yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about a special virtual concert that y'all have coming up. Man, I'm more excited about this thing than I think probably anybody is.
Well, we were really hoping by now to have been performing in front of live audiences, and we did have the good fortune to do an outdoor concert this summer, but unfortunately, with kids not being vaccinated yet, we just can't do it. So we wanted to appreciate the fans, and also, our goal post Bram's retirement was to continue to share the music of Sharon, Lois and Bram with as many people as we can. There's no reason why it shouldn't be evergreen. So my mother and my sons and I have been making music over Zoom, and we just thought a free concert for the fans and friends in North America. And we've actually had people from Australia tuning in as well, and Japan. We
Right.
thought it would be
At
nice
bedtime.
to to do this. So we have some surprises. I mean, Bram is in Victoria right now, but he's gonna zoom in for a performance, and we have good friends who are gonna sing one of Lois's songs, and we're hoping to just interact with the fans as best we can over this medium, which is not ideal, but it's the best that we can do right now.
So to close out this interview, tell us how we can find out more about the virtual concert. If there's folks that want to be a part of it, how can they do so?
Thank you for asking. It is going to be Saturday, January 22nd at 2 p.m. The Zoom link exists already, and it will be shared on our website and all of our socials. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to participate in it. So just on
And
the
our
day
website is SharonLoisandBram.com, right?
Oh, wow, Mom, good job.
Usually that's Randy helping me along the way with that kind of stuff. I'm proud of myself.
Wow.
Andrew, where are we chatting with you?
I'm from Rock Hill, South Carolina. That's close to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, I'm trying to think if, did you ever get to see Sharon, Lois and Bram
I
in concert?
didn't. No, ma'am.
I
So
think we played in Charlotte at some point. It's hard to remember, you know.
Yeah. Well, y'all have a blessed day. Thank y'all so much. I have enjoyed this great interview, and I tell you, we got to have y'all back as soon as those books get released.
anytime, you ask
Good.
really nice questions. So
Yes,
thank
lovely.
you.
Lovely to chat with you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well,
Nice to
thank you
meet
so
you.
much. Y'all have a good day.
You
You
too.
too. Bye.
Bye.